Are we alone in the universe? Are aliens real? Have we been visited from other worlds in the past, or even in modern times? Are they watching us? Does the world's governments know more than they are telling us? No matter your thoughts on any of these questions, how surprised would you be to find out that there has been an unknown craft orbiting our Earth for more than 13,000 years? For over 100 years, this craft has been observed, tracked, and photographed, even by NASA. Communication signals have been received from this craft, and they've been decoded. And yet, you've probably never even heard that such a craft exists. Nostradamus has been translated as saying that in the future, mankind would discover a machine in space that was sent to us by the Watchers. Could he be talking about the Black Knight satellite? Let's find out.
Are you not curious? Who is this man? This Enigma? Yes, a man of many talents, but he is a glitch in the system. He spends his nights scouring texts for traces of lost knowledge. We dare not stand by and turn a blind eye to this man speaking on a public forum. It is all in the file. I present to you on this day the Ryan Files.
So let's start out with a quick overview. In 1899, Nikola Tesla recorded that he was receiving signals from space at his Colorado Springs site. How ironic that Nikola Tesla seems to come up again and again and again. Now later, Marconi, and I'm not even going to attempt to say his first name, well, he encountered these same signals. These signals were an anomaly. Normal shortwave radio signals will reflect off the atmosphere due to propagation. This is a known factor that can be measured. It occurs about 1/7 of a second after transmission due to atmospheric bounce. But the signals Tesla and Marconi were observing became known as LDE signals, or long delayed echo signals, because the bounce would take up to 15 seconds. They were bouncing off of something, but what? And this is a phenomenon that is still not understood or explained to this day. Fast forward to 1954. Elvis released That's All Right Mama, and the United States Marine Corps Major Donald Kehoe discloses that his department had detected 1 or 2 satellites orbiting the Earth on May 14, 1954. A few weeks later, 2 satellites were identified orbiting the Earth at 400 and 600 miles above our planet's surface, and they were emitting strange radio signals at curious intervals. Keep in mind that the first Earth-launched satellite into space was the Russian satellite Sputnik 1, and it was not launched until 3 years later. NASA verified weeks later, after Kehoe's claims, that they too were receiving these signals, and it wasn't long before astronomers all around the world were confirming the existence of these satellites. Folks, this was huge. The US military was concerned, thinking these were Russian satellites. And the Soviet military was also concerned, assuming they were American satellites. When they both realized it was neither, but something else, well, that's when the real space race began. Later, in 1957, after Sputnik 1's launch, a Venezuelan government astronomer was observing the satellite when he noticed a nearby object in a retrograde orbit around the Earth, meaning it orbited the Earth in the opposite direction of Earth's rotation. Now, keep in mind that at this time, no government on Earth had the technology to put a satellite into retrograde or even polar orbit. That wouldn't come until years down the road. Bottom line, in 1957, an object in retrograde orbit, it wasn't from Earth. Now, years go by, and throughout the late 50s, there was a recognition of a dark satellite orbiting our Earth, which became known as the Black Knight satellite. This fact was eventually admitted by the US government in the 1960s and was revealed by John Finney of the New York Times on February 11, 1960.
Washington, February 10th. An unidentified silent satellite has been discovered circling the Earth in a near-polar orbit by United States tracking stations, the Defense Department said today. The identity and origin of the mystery satellite, which has been dubbed the Dark Satellite, are not known despite nearly 2 weeks of tracking.
So let's recap all this. In 1960, the U.S. Defense Department admitted to a mysterious satellite orbiting the Earth. Their words, not mine. Now, this article got a lot of people interested, obviously, but when trying to track the satellite, well, something peculiar happened. Some nights it was there, others it wasn't. And some nights it would appear to be somewhere where it wasn't supposed to be. Now, years after both the US and Russia entered into the space program, both were upset and suspected the other country as the culprit. U.S. military assets were deployed to track and photograph the satellites, which they successfully did in 1960. But of course, that report and those photographs, they've never been released. Now, later, in 1961, the Smithsonian Observatory at Harvard University spotted the object and shared its location worldwide, asking for help to track it. And guess what? The world responded. Jacques Vallée, an astronomer from France, was able to track and even photograph the satellite. It was in a polar orbit, again, which did not exist at that time, as the Americans and Soviets just didn't have that technology or capability yet. But, interestingly enough, we now know today that a polar orbit around the Earth is the best and most efficient way to observe the entire planet. Interesting. Now, Jacques Vallée was actually able to measure the object's size and estimate its mass. It was nearly the size of an 18-wheeler and weighing around 15 tons. Now, keep in mind, nothing launched into space orbit in the early 1960s came even close to that size or weight. An excited Jacques Vallée compiled all his research, photos, and observations and delivered them to his supervisor. Now, what happened then? Well, everything was immediately confiscated, the photos destroyed, and the data erased, allegedly because his observatory was embarrassed they couldn't identify the object. Really? Ironically, Vallée, who is still alive today and who was never a UFO enthusiast, has since written 15 books and many papers supporting the existence of UFOs. Moving forward. While there was a massive amount of Earth-based visual data on the object worldwide, what was really needed was up-close observation. Enter U.S. NASA astronaut Colonel Gordon Cooper. This dude was awesome. He was involved in the early U.S. space program, served on many missions, and is recorded as the only man to ever fall asleep during liftoff. Are you kidding me? This guy was the grit that built the foundation of the U.S. space program for others like Neil Armstrong to follow. Now, during his Mercury 9 mission from the capsule, he saw an object orbiting the Earth in retrograde. And the ground crew, well, they saw it as well on radar. Heck, NBC News even reported it. But when he got back to Earth, the press was not allowed to ask about it. The official explanation, well, there was a CO2 buildup in the craft that induced hallucinations in Colonel Gordon Cooper. Colonel Gordon Cooper denied the sighting until he retired. He was bound by his military oath, kind of like Admiral Byrd, and he was true to that oath. But after his retirement, he opened up. He talked about seeing saucer-shaped craft while he was a test pilot, and claimed until his death that the U.S. government was covering up information about UFOs, stating that he saw hundreds of UFO crafts during his career, all confirmed by radar, and he even testified in front of the United Nations about his experiences. So do you believe the Black Knight satellite exists? Oh wait, there's more. In a 1973 article in Spaceflight magazine, Scottish scientist Duncan Lunan revealed that not only was he able to record transmissions from the mysterious satellite, but that he was also able to decode some of the transmissions. By charting the frequency of the transmissions and their intervals, he was able to plot a star map that nearly represented the Boötis constellation. The only star out of place in the constellation was Epsilon Boötis. Did this indicate the satellite's origin? Duncan Lunan reviewed data from French astronomers that was taken in 1929, well before anyone on Earth put a satellite into space, and the data matched his findings. And while the star map very closely resembled the constellation Boötis, it wasn't perfect. Of course, until he accounted for and calculated the axial precession of the sky from Earth. It was then he discovered what the constellation would have looked like in 11,000 BC from Earth, 13,000 years ago, and it was exact. Furthermore, he was also able to decode a message from the radio signals that read the following.
Our home is Upsilon Boötis, which is a double star. We live on the sixth planet of 7, coming from the Sun, which is the larger of the two. Our sixth planet has 1 moon. Our fourth planet has 3. Our first and third planets each have 1. Our probe is in the position of Arcturus, known in our maps.
Folks, this was reported in Time magazine, the New York Times, and other major news outlets. but no one seemed to notice or take it seriously. Have you ever heard about this? I didn't think so. Fast forward again to December 4th, 1998. The Space Shuttle Endeavour set out on mission STS-88, its first mission to the International Space Station. Now, its mission was to deliver the Unity node, the section that would provide the connection between the US and Soviet parts of the International Space Station. But on December 11th, a number of photos were taken and later released by NASA, and they show what appears to be a craft that's in orbit around the Earth. And they knew about it before they got there. This is what they had to say about it during the mission.
Houston, this is Discovery. We still have the alien spacecraft under report.
It took 100 years, and finally there it was. Until it wasn't. So here's the not-so-shocking reality. NASA, despite 100 years of history of their astronauts acknowledging the craft, well, they emphatically stated that the object seen during the STS-88 mission was an accidentally lost thermal cover, and pictures were taken to document this. But of course, this heat shield is very small. Here it is being manufactured. Do you think this claim matches up to Vallée's description of a 15-ton, 18-wheeler size object? Now don't get it twisted, folks. There have been many sightings of the Black Knight satellite over the years, documented with photos, video, and orbital data. After 1960, remember 1960 when the Defense Department acknowledged the satellite existed? Well, after that, nearly all claims about the Black Knight satellite's existence have been immediately debunked by the US military. Of course, the military's claims have ultimately revealed that their debunking was based upon false information, as the US military was simply trying to cover up the Corona project, a secret spy satellite operation. Why can't we just be told the truth? The bottom line is this. There are witnesses and sightings of the Black Knight satellite over the past 100 years from all over the world, from private citizens to governments, agencies. It's been seen. Photographs, film, and data, though, have been destroyed. Astronauts claim to have seen it and admit to an active cover-up. And Vallée's measurements of mass indicate it's not a small heat shield. So where do we go from here? If this is in fact an otherworld satellite in polar orbit, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that it's probably there to observe the planet. And if it's been there for 13,000 years, well, that opens a whole new line of inquiry. In our modern time, with our modern technology, we have the ability to not only see this craft, but to visit it. The question is, have we? If so, what did we find? Was it too dangerous to reveal? Was it something we would have rather never known? I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. There is more to the Black Knight satellite than we know. Of that, I'm convinced. If true, are you not a bit concerned, or at least curious? So when you go to sleep tonight, never forget that there's an object in our planet's orbit that has possibly been there for 13,000 years, potentially of alien origin, observing us since antiquity. And our government and taxpayer-funded programs like NASA, well, they refuse to let us in on the truth. The truth that they first admitted to in 1968. Consider that. You all are awesome. I can't thank you enough for tuning in to the Ryan Files. Now be sure to share this episode with your friends. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you really want to support this channel, stop by theryanfiles.com and click on Become an Agent, where you'll be forwarded to our Patreon page, folks. Every little bit matters. Every little bit is appreciated. Thank you so much. Now check out the final clue in the outro for the January puzzle. Be the first to present the solution to the ryanfiles.com/pigpen, and you will receive 00 agent status with the Ryan Files. Folks, you rock. Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious out there, my friends, and I'll see you next week right here on the Ryan Files.
The Ryan Files.